Okay, welcome back. Not been as long as I thought before doing my next video, but just thought I'd show you what I've been up to over the holiday period. One of the many little projects I wanted to do, been meaning to do for a while, is create some more loads for my wagons, in particular these open stake wagons, usually seen carrying crates and other sort of general cargo. But what I've also seen is a lot of them are covered with tarpaulins, and I thought I'd make my own tarpaulin load. So if I just reach here and pick this one up, this is in the middle of being painted. Let's see if I can get this to focus properly. There we go. So basically, this is just a bit of hard foam covered in some kitchen roll that I dipped in a usual PVA water mix and let it harden, and I've just painted this first coat overnight. Gone for a couple of colours. I think this is actually khaki drab. I've also got a very sort of off grey colour, but I've also decided to do a red tarpaulin and a blue one. This one will be rolled up. You can't see a lot of the detail on this yet because it's just first coat. I haven't weathered it and given it some highlights. As you can see, hopefully as you can see, maybe if I put this on my hand like this, there we go. You can see the tarpaulin just rolled up, and this will go into one of the empty wagons I have. And so that's just the first stage of the painting process, weathering. And here's another one. Again, it's difficult to get, there we go, into focus. It's just the first coat of paint. So there'll be some highlights and dust and whatever put on there, and that will give it a bit more of a realistic look to these stake wagons. Now, I do have some of them here, and if I can just find one. Where is it? Bear with me, hold on. Okay, here's one I just taken off the layout. These are the ones that come ready-made, so to speak. These are from Mini Tricks. I've got quite a few of these with these little loads. Again, I've painted these and put some highlights and a couple of light washes on it just to sort of accentuate the creases and what have you. The only problem I have with these is they are all identical. So if you run a few of them together, it does look a bit strange. So hence the reason to make my own and mix these up and hopefully create a more convincing look to some general cargo being moved around. What I've also been doing is weathering some of these modern high-sided open wagons. This one is from the SBB, the Swiss Railways. Originally comes in a very bright pink colour, very garish. I decided that this is ideal to be weathered down and made to look used and abused, so to speak. So basically some washers, using the sponge technique where you just dab a sponge into some paint and then you dab most of it off before applying it to the wagon, and with that you create some very realistic looking rust spots where in areas where the paint has been chipped away or rubbed off or flaked off. And also the other thing that I've done is the interior of these wagons. Unless you're putting some loads into them, and not actually seeing the inside. And again, it doesn't look very convincing. This was all pink on the inside. So what I've done, I've painted the side wall, the interior side walls, a sort of metal brown colour, and applied some pigments, rust coloured pigments to it. And then I've also painted the wooden boards. And this one I've just painted them, and a few of the other wagons I've done, I've actually inserted my own wooden planking. It's quite a boring job. You just cut them into thin strips and then glue them on the inside. But on this one I thought I'd just give it a go with painting them, applying some washes, and just using various shades of brown and grey and what have you to create the planking effect. And this is not finished yet because I've got to put some dirt and debris on the inside. So put that to one side. This one is, it's coming back. This one is, a similar method has been used. This is a DB version. And again, some chipping applied, some dark brown, almost black washes to replicate dirt, dust and what have you. And then on the inside, again, I'm trying to get the light so you can see this clearly. I've painted the walls, the rust colour, stained it, etc. And then on this one, I have, if I can get it to focus clearly, left some debris. This one's been obviously used to carry some sort of coal load. I've just left a bit of debris in the corners and along the edges that wasn't removed when the wagon was emptied. So all in all, it does give a good look if you're running empty wagons. What I've also done is pick out some of the, again it's very difficult to focus, here we go, some of the handles and hooks in a typical yellow sort of colour. When you get these wagons, most of them come unpainted, so it's all the same colour brown plastic, again very shiny, and it doesn't look convincing. So I've just added a few of these little touches just to make them a little bit more different from the wagons you usually see. And when I have these running, so I've got a rake of 20 of these now, they'll have various loads. You've seen it probably running before, but I've never shown it in any sort of detail. So I'll probably finish that off and then show you a running shot of these wagons going around the layout. bit of a disaster here. Well, not really a disaster, I should say, but this, if I can get the camera in, this part of the point has broken off. I've tried gluing it on, but it's just not working the way it should be. There's supposed to be a little pin underneath this bar, I suppose you would call it, that makes it flexible when the point is switched, but it's not working, and it's also broken off here. It wasn't turning very well, so I've decided I'm going to have to replace it. Similar job to the one I mentioned in the previous video with my double slip. I'm just going to have to cut this out and replace the point. Now this point is approximately, I'm going to say 35 years old, so it's had a long life, as are most of the points on my layout. There's only a few new ones that I've bought recently, so it's done well. But this opportunity, when I take this point out, will also allow me to replace this whole section of track here. You can't probably see it very clearly, but it's made up of small sections of set track, and I'm actually just going to cut a piece of flexi track to size to fit in there, because it's got a bit of connection issues, because they don't all have dropper wires coming off them, and the same for this as well. You probably can't make it out, but it's a couple of pieces of set track joined together. Okay, so stage one has been completed, which is the laying of the track and connecting it all up again. I'm now going to do some testing and make sure that everything works as it should before I start on the landscaping, ballasting, etc., and covering up this whole area and putting it back to what it was looking like before. Just seeing if you can see the dropper wires I put in. There's one there, and one there, and you can see the blue wire there for that rail. I've still got to put the sleepers in here where there are gaps, but all in all, it looks good and it seems to be operational. I have already run a few trains over this, so fingers crossed there'll be no issues, but it's early days yet. I don't want to start putting the landscape back and then finding out there's an issue later on, so I'll get on with some of that testing just now, and then we'll see how this goes. Progress is coming along nicely. Covered up the point motors and started the ballasting on this little bit here. Because it's a tight space, what I've done is cut a piece of clear plastic, which I've painted afterwards, to cover up this gap. The problem is the point motor for this point goes actually under the track here, so I've had to cut, when I originally installed it, had to cut away the baseboard, and I had issues before when I was trying to landscape it. I used a piece of ballast sheet cut to size. It didn't look very good, so this time I thought I'd try something different. So I've cut this piece of plastic to the required shape, and it actually tucks in, if you can see that very clearly, under the sleepers on this piece of track here. So I can put the gravel on and it won't fall away, and if I'm very careful with the ballasting, I can get all of this ballasted up to here with no issues. The usual problem is I've got to be very careful with the point mechanism here and make sure that that remains clear. I could, in theory, cover these up, go across completely, but then if there's an issue with the point, there is no way that I would be able to switch it manually without lifting up the ballast and the landscape. So as a compromise, if I can show you, for example here, I always cut out a little notch so that I can reach the mechanism. You can see on all my points I've done that, and that's just a safeguard to be able to switch the points manually if there is an issue. So the downside of that is I've got to be very careful when it comes to ballasting that nothing falls inside the mechanism. So it's a worthwhile compromise. It just means it takes a little bit longer, but I've got that safety net, so to speak, of being able to switch the point, and it still looks relatively good when the ballast and landscaping around it is done. Okay, that's it for tonight. I'm just going to let this bit of ballasting that I did earlier on dry. It's got the usual PVA water mix, so that's been applied and it's drying out nicely. With the colder days in the loft, it will take a little bit longer than normal to dry, so it may be another day, probably 2, before I can continue and do this little bit here. The reason I didn't do it all in one go is I wanted this done first, and then, as I said, I've got to be very careful when I get close to the point that I don't get anything into the mechanism. So I'll just do it one little bit at a time, just to avoid any issues. That's the ballasting done. I've just got this little bit area in here to fill in with some probably low grass, small bushes, whatever, something not too big, or maybe just fill it with gravel. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'll see what I've got that just to fill that little space. But that's, as I said, the ballasting done. The only thing I've got to do now is to weather the tracks, and I'll just use that with some sleeper grime colour that I've got, and just to finish that all off. But the testing has been successful. We've got an engine just coming through here, so you see, nice and smooth, no issues whatsoever, so it all looks good. In fact, we're just going to follow this BR62 on the branch line and see it pass through. We'll also have ICE passing on the main line just behind this any second now. So there we are, contrast between the old and the new. Anyway, that's all for this video. I'll keep you updated with the repair work on that track on the next one. Hopefully by then everything will be done. So hope you enjoyed this, and as usual, any comments or questions, just leave them below.